On the night of June the 9th, 1912, in a small town of Villisca, Iowa, where everyone knew everyone and doors were rarely locked, Josiah Moore finished his shift at the John Deere plant, walked home under a quiet summer sky, and settled into what he believed would be an ordinary evening with his wife Sarah and their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd and Paul, unaware that somewhere nearby a stranger was already moving with purpose, watching the house at 508 East 2nd Street as the town fell asleep. Earlier that night, the Moore children had attended a Presbyterian church program with 2 friends, Lena and Anina Stillinger, daughters of a nearby family. And when the event ended, the girls asked if they could stay the night, something Sarah Moore kindly agreed to, adding 2 more beds to the house and sealing the fate of the 8 people in total, because sometime after midnight, long after the lamps were turned low and the house was quiet, the stranger entered without force, likely through an unlocked door, carrying an axe that belonged to Josiah himself, and began upstairs where the parents slept, standing silently at the foot of the bed for a moment before striking Josiah Moore in the head with the blunt side of the axe, again and again, then turning to Sarah, who may have just woken long enough to realise someone was there before she too was killed. And from there the stranger moved through the house methodically, killing each child in their sleep, one by one, using the same side of the axe as if trying to keep them quiet, pulling the sheets up over their faces afterwards in a gesture that felt disturbingly deliberate, almost personal, before descending to the guest room where the Stillinger girls slept, attacking them as well. And when it was done, the killer did not flee in panic, but took time, covering mirrors and windows with clothing, placing a slab of bacon and a bowl of water near the axe, washing up in the kitchen and leaving the house in the same calm silence in which he had entered. The next morning, a neighbour named Mary Peckham grew concerned when the Moore family did not come out of their usual routines, and after knocking and receiving no answer, she summoned Josiah's brother Ross Moore, who forced entry and immediately realised something was terribly wrong, shouting for everyone to stay back as the townspeople gathered, but it was too late, because before the authorities arrived, the house was filled with curious locals who trampled through the rooms, touched the bodies, moved items unknowingly, destroyed evidence. And when the sheriff finally examined the scene, he found details that made the crime even more unsettling, including the fact that the killer had waited inside the house earlier that evening, possibly hiding in the attic where a footprint and disturbed insulation were later discovered. Listening as the family went about their normal night, laughing, talking, living, while he waited for them to sleep. The brutality of the murder shocked the entire country, and the newspapers flooded Villisca with reporters, psychics, and amateur detectives, while suspects came and went, including a travelling preacher named Reverend George Kelly, who confessed under pressure and later recanted, and a known serial killer, Henry Lee Moore, who had committed similar axe murders across the Midwest. But no one was ever convicted, and the case slowly grew colder even as fear lingered, because the most terrifying part was not just how the family had died, but how easily the killer had vanished, leaving behind no clear trail, no confirmed identity, just the knowledge that a stranger had walked into a peaceful home and erased an entire family without ever being caught. Years later, the Moore house was preserved and eventually opened to the public, and visitors began reporting strange experiences, children's voices, footsteps, doors closing on their own, and the overwhelming feeling of being watched, especially in the upstairs bedrooms. And while skeptics dismiss these claims, the historical record remains unchanged. 8 real people died in that house in that town, and at the hands of someone who was never identified, someone who likely rode the rails or walked the roads afterward, blending into another town, another crowd, another night. And if you imagine the killer leaving Villisca as the day's sun rose, passing farmers starting their day unnoticed, carrying nothing but a memory and a skill for violence, it becomes clear why this story still unsettles people more than a century later, because it wasn't a monster or a ghost that committed the crime, but a real human being, a stranger who proved that even the quietest places on the calmest nights can be entered by someone who means to destroy everything inside and leave without a name.